You're listening to Electrician Live with your host, Paul Abernathy and Jay Grunberg.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Electrician Live. My name is Paul Abernathy, your co-host, and with me, as always, my co-host, my cohort in crime, Mr. Jay Grunberg, all the way from Colorado.
Woohoo! What up, everybody?
How's things going in Colorado, Jay?
You know, things are chilly, man. They're getting chillier, and you know, at this time of year, you think with the holidays coming up that we would slow down, but we're not slowing down, man. As far as company-wise, we're just busy.
Busy?
We're slammed. Yeah, it's pretty busy right now. I mean, we're just cranking out the jobs, and we've I told you earlier how we're doing a shift in the business thing of how we used to have the supply houses drop off material on the jobs.
That's right. You became the supply house, the sub-supply house.
I became wired up supply house, personal supply house is what it is. But actually, it's been awesome this last week. I've been super busy, like I was telling you. But we've caught some wrinkles in the system, and we're ironing them out. And you know, so far so good. So
well, good. It allows you to at least I'm not sure why the chat function's not working on the screen, folks, but I'm not sure what's going on with that. So here in Virginia, excuse me, did I say Virginia? I my whole life in Virginia. Here in Texas. You thought I moved, didn't you? No, here it feels like it because it's getting cool at night. Still kind of warm in the day, but it's getting cool in the evenings. So, for a minute there, I thought I was back in Virginia.
Yeah, those cold nights that you have, you got to make sure you keep your windows closed and have good seal around them, because if not, that breeze just leaks in and you end up getting all stuffy and people think you're sick. And, you know,
absolutely.
We got to take out those portable AC units I had. I had to pull those out now and kind of close that area up because that's what was happening. The air was leaking in at night, and you just get so cold through the night.
Yeah, it tell you what, it gets quite chilly. It definitely gets quite chilly. So other than
how's
that,
the work and everything? Everything
good work. Code. We just finished, for those out there that are into that type of thing, we just finished code making panel 5's second draft stage. A lot of changes. Some there was supposed to be some significant changes to Article 250, but we kind of diverted some of those changes. Like people wanted to change it from bonding, but they didn't want to use the term bonding jumper and add the acronym BJ because people felt that was offensive. I'm like, okay, grow up a little bit. But they got rid of some of the acronyms, and that was some of the changes. And, they wanted to try to get things like bonding conductor, equipment bonding conductor. I mean, they wanted the correlating committee wanted us to change all the definitions, and it wasn't ready. It wasn't ready for something like that. I'll try to add something, Jay, while we're talking here.
Yeah, no worries. So with the stuff that you've gotten done, because you know how you sometimes you say, yeah, we're going in the right direction, or maybe we took a couple steps backwards, or we're kind of at the same point. Where would you say at the end of your meetings that grounding and bonding is for the next code cycle? Is it moving forward? Is it?
I mean, we have there's quite a bit of. I would say in the process, we're probably about 65% of
nice.
where we need to be as far as the getting the process done. We still have to vote. The members have to vote and stuff like that. But other than that, that's pretty much after we do some voting, and then of course we have the committee meeting, the big national convention meeting, and then of course there'll be NITMAMs and that type of thing. But the interesting thing about the changes in 250, that when I do my webinar next month, I will be talking about different changes, certain things to keep people aware of, because there are some things that are coming along down the pike and some subtle changes. But other than that, I mean, I would say nothing earth-shattering took place in Article 250, nothing massive. But there was definitely a number of changes that we were going to vote on. That's for sure. I don't agree with all the changes, but at the end of the day, it's consensus. So other than that is all I've been dealing with the last week is code panel, and next week. Code panels again. So next week I'm on code panel 17, and good news there is I'm an alternate on that one. I'm not the principal, so I don't have to pay as close attention. Maybe.
Right. Are you kind of like the substitute teacher that comes in and fills in for a day while
that's
the real teacher's out, like on vacation or something?
Yeah, so I get to kind of say, oh, hey, I got to step away for a minute and do something. Whereas Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I really couldn't do that. So anyway, Jay, tonight for everybody out there, we have a great show lined up for you. Jay, you've probably seen this when you were doing commercial work. The long-running debate that people have had, and we're going to break it down. The long-running debate on when you're putting a Luminaire trofer, or however you say it, wherever you're at in the country, I always just call them Luminaires. So putting them in a ceiling grid, and the big debate that has gone around in whether or not you have to secure the Luminaire to the grid or vice versa. Or if you independently support the Luminaire, is it technically not being supported by the grid? So if it's not being supported by the ceiling grid, does it have to meet the rules? Now, we've talked about this for years and years and years. And again, depending on where you're at in the country, people had different views and different opinions on it. And so we're going to discuss that into today's episode and kind of set the record straight once and for all. And in doing that, we're going to show the history of the code and how this question was actually answered many, many, many years ago. In fact, this was answered before I even graduated high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this was...
Dinosaurs are still around.
Yeah. Thanks. So this is definitely set the record straight. But a lot of times people don't research the code, and it has gotten harder to do now that it's gone 100% electronic. I mean, we used to get things on ROPs, ROCs, and we used to get these, and we could go through them, and they were great because, and for those that aren't familiar with that, that was when we would get an opinion from the code panel, right? And the code panel would, we could read it and we can kind of get some insight on what the code panel is thinking. So if somebody submitted something to the code and we really were doing it because we wanted to get some kind of guidance, we might submit something to a code panel just for them to answer something, and we knew they were going to shoot it down, but maybe, just maybe, we're trying to get a response from a code panel.
Right.
So that's kind of things that takes place. So back in the old days, it was so much easier to follow. I mean, not that you can't now, because we can go electronically and go in and look and see Terra. Now we call it Terra. But sometimes Terra will terrorize a submittal and make it look totally crappy. But you know what? NFPA is getting much better at it. And to be honest with you, they've been doing a great job. NFPA always does a great job. And now kind of technically under the helm of Jeff Sargent when it comes to the technical stuff, it just knocked, to me, that just raised the game even higher because, Jeff Sargent is the man. He knows his stuff and he's a great guy and he really knows how to deliver the message. So he's kind of heading up that thing, if you will, when it comes to that part of the NFPA. It used to be Mark Early, and Mark Early did a great job too. He did a great job too, but I have great thoughts of how Jeff Sargent's going to do this, and he's already been doing it. And the guys that work for NFPA that are doing all the notes and trying to keep track of everything we do in a committee, I would want that job. But they're doing a great job. So people ask me who writes the code. That's not the code panel people. It's those of you that submit things to the code panel, right? And we just massage it and determine whether or not it's valid or not, or whether it's technically substantiated or not, and all that kind of stuff. So, anywho. So, I'm not sure what Nick was saying with the F. He's about ready to cuss me out. So be ready to boot somebody, Jay. All right. So, anyway, that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Watch it, Nick.
Yep. So we're going to talk about tonight. So I know that the debate has been going for years, you know.
Yeah. So for me, I'm just going to kind of tell you a couple ways that I did it as an apprentice, kind of a couple ways, and then and maybe some guys in the
I'll
chat
tell you whether you were right or wrong, or whether or not I would have failed you. How about that?
Yeah, that's fine. Because you probably, I don't know. Again, I still am confused because even what the code says and what one foreman would say to another foreman, even on the same project, but you're on different levels of the hotel or the building, and you go and you say, okay, well, downstairs I was doing this method, and then you go upstairs and go, no, we're doing this method, and it's like, all right, whatever, I'll do it whatever way. And so, one of the ways that we would do it is we would take single pieces of grid wire and put them on all four corners of the Luminaire.
Yep.
That was one way.
So
all
it
four
was
corners.
basically
every one of them.
So basically, you independently supported it.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you were doing. Okay.
Right. So we did all four corners, which again, it's a little bit of a booger because if you guys know what those darn grid wires, if you pull up on them a little too much, because that darn hole that you have to stick them through is just the right size for the actual grid support to go through. That's on the corner of the Luminaire. You're putting it in there, and as you're tightening it down, it's kind of lifting that corner up off of the grid, and so you got to go back and adjust some of those. I think that was probably one of the trickiest parts, especially when you're doing all four corners, because you have more of a likeliness to raise one end higher than the others.
Yeah.
So that was one way we did it. Another way we did it was we would cross corner the supports, meaning we only went just on two sides of it, but they were crossed.
Yeah.
And we would drill a self-tapper through the grid support and the actual Luminaire. So we would drill the grid to the Luminaire on the other ends that weren't supported by the wires. Okay. So you'd have wires on one end and the other, and then you'd have two screws, self-tappers, drilled through the grid through the Luminaire.
All right. Okay, so people that are joining us late, our discussion is the long-standing, and Jay's experience of how he was doing it is, and in anything that you've even described so far, Jay, what we're talking about is if I have a suspended or drop ceiling, and I'm going to put luminaires, and we're using for this episode, we're talking, because we could talk about all kinds of things like ceiling boxes and all that, but we're talking about today we're going to solve the old debate about putting a luminaire inside or in a suspended ceiling grid. Okay. That's what we're going to settle this debate, because I have seen people submit things to boards and committees and for years. And here's the argument. Okay, you ready, Jay? Because I know what you did. So here's what they say. If I'm not supporting the Luminaire by the ceiling grid, then I don't have to meet the rules of the NEC because I'm independently supporting the Luminaire when it comes to supporting requirements. So I've heard that. So they say, look, if I put guy wires or support wires from the Luminaire to the building structure, okay, remember the ceiling grid's not the structure, okay, that's just the ceiling grid. But if I put it from the Luminaire 4 corners, 2 corners, whatever, and we'll get into the details on that, the instructions from the manufacturers and whatnot. But if I support that to the structural framing of the building, so the concept there is it's not being supported by the grid, therefore I don't have to meet some of the rules in the code. So that was how y'all did it, right, Jay? So y'all independently supported it, but y'all didn't necessarily take the Luminaire and attach it directly to the grid. I see you did on some of them. When you did 2 wires, you would drill and do something. But when you did 4 wires, would you physically connect the Luminaire to the grid, ceiling grid, or no?
Nope. No, we would just do the four wires.
Okay. So that's been a long running debate. And also we want to yell out to folks in the chat room that are joining us. Los, thank you. Finley been waiting a while for tonight. I think he was in there early. In Ohio, thank you for joining us. Carlos, Nick, thank you. Tim, Code Strong, Yanni and Nikki, thank you for joining. Some of the regulars are in the house tonight. Thank you for joining. We're also streaming over on LinkedIn, as well as on Twitter, as well as on, I don't remember where now. Oh, YouTube and Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Okay, Facebook. Okay, we gave up on the Instagram thing until they get better off figuring that out, because I was using some other way to do it, but it just didn't work. So, hey, 4 platforms is enough, man. So, also Electrician Live, if you want to watch there, streaming there as well. And we don't forget our podcasters. Everybody out there listening on all of our popular podcast platforms, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. You can listen to this live. If you don't want to see our smiling faces, more than happy to listen if you want. So, that's right. All right, so we're going to settle this debate tonight, Jay. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. And I don't know if Oscar's in the house, but I have to say it again, Oscar, your package hasn't gone out because I haven't had a vehicle all week. My truck has been in the shop, so my wife's been stuck at home, and Zach didn't get it to the post office, but it will go out tomorrow. I promise. It will go out tomorrow. Okay?
Yeah, I have to send him off a hat, too. He won one of the hats.
Oh, did he?
In that last week. Yeah, we were in such a rush, but I threw that one in if he hit blue, and he reminded me he hit blue. And
did he remind you?
So he hit me up for he reminded me. He said, hey, man, do I still get this? I'm like, yeah, of course. I just, like we're super busy. So even the UPS or the store is like literally 10 minutes down the road. But I can't find time right now to freeway. So it'll probably be this weekend that I send it out.
Yep, but we will get it out to you. I will definitely get it out to you. And I threw some extra goodies in there for you. Okay.
So the debate. The big thing, and so another way I did it, I just wanted to finish out. A third way I did it was they have the hurricane clips on them, or what they would call hurricane clips, and those are the clips that come with them that flip over and attach to the grid.
Mm-hmm.
We would attach those they would always flip those open and support them. So that was always in the install as well, as flipping those things and having those clips rest on the grid itself.
Yeah.
As well.
Okay, so I know that Nick posted something in here about an inspector that turned him down because those clips weren't sufficient. So we're going to get into all that. But
yeah, I've seen it, man. I've seen it, Nick.
Okay, so we're going to look and see what the code. Now, remember, what we're not talking about is that if I have wiring methods, MC cable, raceways, or whatnot above the suspended ceiling, they cannot be connected to the supports that support the grid. They would have to have their own independent supports. Okay?
Yes.
And you would identify them so that they are, obviously different than the supports for the ceiling grid. And the reason for this,
a lot of times we would just spray paint them.
Yeah, spray. We would take a whole bunch of the tie wires that we were using, put them down, and just spray them all, paint them all, and just have a stack of them there.
You'd lay them on like a pallet or something like that, or some type of piece of cardboard, and just spread them all out. And the apprentice is out there. I don't know if he's huffing more paint than he's spraying, but hey, who cares? He's getting it done, Yeah.
Well, that would explain the brain damage to the helper. But yeah, that's what we would do. and we would get a bunch of them so that it was distinctly different than the supporting grid. One is, people argue about this, and Texas had an amendment to this, and I convinced them to get rid of it. I'm like, these grids weigh a certain weight, and there's different ratings on the different ceiling grids. Some that are fire resistant rating, some the standard ones are not. Some of them have the tiles that are fire resistant rating, and they are a lot heavier, and so the grid's got to be designed.
Right.
So grids have to be designed to support weight. If the grid is designed to physically support a luminaire, then the grid has to be designed as such. So grids have their own listings. Now, as electricians, we don't always see that, or we don't always know that, but
right.
They do have their own, listings that are associated with their own UL listings that are associated with that. So when it comes to wiring methods above a suspended ceiling, bat wings to the guy wires and things like that, you're not going to use the ones that support the grid. You're going to install your own. Okay. It's pretty straightforward. 300.11, go in the code. You can see that. It's kind of not topic today because we're talking about luminaires being dumped into a suspended ceiling, but it's always important to know those other code rules for, getting your wiring methods over there and making sure, again, that the ceiling grid support system, the guy wires for that, or the supporting wires, are not designed to support raceways, boxes, cables, and things like that. It's there to support the ceiling grid. You're an electrician and you got to run these raceways and cables and boxes, then install your own. Your own.
Yes.
Don't use those. Okay, as tempting as it may be. Oh, what's one MC? That's what they said in Texas. What's one or two MCs? I'm like, well, one or two MCs going around adds up, weight adds up. So, anyway.
So when we would get done with some ceiling and inspections in certain rooms, and we'd have to add some MC cable through that, that's when you seen it the most. Was after the inspection's already passed, but they got to fly another line something through there. Yeah. I can't see. It's too dark. I don't know if this is orange spray paint or if it's just the silver. I'm just going to put it on there.
Just put it on there. Yeah, but during inspection, not so much. And as an inspector, I used to go in, and we would do an inspection before it's closed up, and we were looking the ceiling to see what was being what. We were looking for things like making sure cables aren't supporting other cables, that raceways weren't supporting cables because they're not listed as a support for the cable. Did anybody tie wrap this MC cable to an EMT? Or, we were looking for all those type of things in the ceiling. So we can, in that point, they might not, but at that point, we're also looking at any luminaires that might be in. We tell them, just don't put the ceiling tiles in yet. We're looking, that type of thing. Okay. So, a couple things that we have to put together with this. There are building codes. So the National Electrical Code doesn't have anything to do with supporting a luminaire to the structure with the use of these wires, right? It's not something. I mean, we have the requirements for supporting outlet boxes to a grid. We have other things, but we really don't deal in the guy wire requirement, whether it's one on each corner or one on opposite corners, and like you were doing the 2 and 2 or 2 and 4. The NEC doesn't deal in that. The building code does. The building code will talk about supporting this because of first responders and firefighters and pulling down the ceiling grids and all this kind of stuff. Also, you have rules that may supersede the NEC, local rules, okay, that might amend or do something to it. But you also have to remember that the building codes in certain areas of the country have seismic requirements, right? So they don't want a ceiling moving and then all of a sudden a luminary to fall out of a ceiling, hit somebody in the head and kill them. Okay. You ever seen a picture of those earthquakes out in California, things like that? It gets quite wild. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So they don't want that. So that is what brought to us the point where somebody would say, well, Paul, if you independently support the luminaire and it's not being supported by the suspended ceiling system, isn't that better? And that was the argument. And that's why they said, well, I don't have to secure it to it if I'm supporting the luminaire. That was where that all started. Right? Okay. So in that theory, with that's kind of where it started. There was, during the 1987 NEC development process, there was some code submittals proposals that were submitted to the code making panel. And their effort here to submit these was to get a change in the code. And what we're going to do is I'm going to read them, and I'll show them on the screen. But I'm going to read to you what it said during that debate, okay, or during that submittal process. Okay, so I have them here, and I'll share them on the screen, because we'll go to that page. And this is what we have. So I've got two of them. So one was during the one of the stages, which was the comment on proposals, and then one was during the original, which is kind of like our public input original proposal. And what it was is what you see up on the screen. It is 1832. Now, this was submitted. Now, this was back when the Luminaires in a suspended ceiling was 410.16c. It's not that anymore, okay? But that's when it was then. And here's what was submitted. And what's most important is the code panel's intent. So if you look on the screen, I don't know if you can see it, Jay, but it says the submitter gives his name. Notice he's in California, where you have most of the seismic activity. His recommendation at that time was to revise the second sentence that follows, says fixtures so supported or otherwise supported. So his substantiation was this: independently supported fixtures located in the plane of a suspended ceiling must be prevented from independent motion from that of the ceiling system. So, Jay, if I support the Luminaire by itself and the ceiling grid system is rigid, and there's an earthquake or there's some kind of seismic activity, they get moving opposite each other. So that means the luminaires would start moving on their own, the ceiling grid would move, everything would get moving, and then you got things banging into each other, and that's where things start falling off. Lenses falling off, lamps fall, everything starts going crazy rather than moving in unison. Okay? So it said the substantiation to add this in here was independent support fixtures located in the plane of the ceiling, suspended ceiling must be prevented from independent motion from that of the ceiling system. If not, the movement of the fixture will cause damage to the ceiling. It is the intent of this proposal that structurally fixtures in ceiling systems be considered as components of that system. Now, the panel accepted this in principle, but they deleted the words "so supported" in the second sentence of section 410.16c. Okay? Now, the panel made this comment, and this is extremely important to this discussion. The code-making panel said the panel agrees that all fixtures within the ceiling system should be attached to the ceiling system. And it was unanimously affirmed. Now, the point we bring that up is there's a second one that was during the comment stage. And that one, I don't necessarily see if I have that one on the screen. I could pop that one up. Let me put the other one down. And that's this one. And it's hard to see it, Jay, but I'll put it in the middle. So this one was submitted. And the submitter, it stated, revise this section. Again, we're still in 410.16c. It says, revise sections further to replace the word at appropriate intervals to as required by applicable building codes and add an exception as follows. Exception. Mechanical fastening means shall not be required where fixtures are supported directly to the structural ceiling by an approved method. Okay, so his attempt here was to try to get in independently supported luminaires, right, in the ceiling grid. Here's what the substantiation was. Substantiation. To remove a vague, indefinite, or interpretive term covering the etc. in section C, 2B, in the NEC style manual, blah, 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 blah. It also goes on to provide an alternate means of support where suspended ceilings have not been proven to be the strength that will support the fixture. So what he's saying is, we know that suspended ceiling grids come in different ratings. If you don't know the rating of that ceiling, then you're putting the luminaire in there. Then he's saying it should have a provision in there stating the building codes, which would require you to independently support. Like I said earlier, that's something that's in the building code. It's not in the electrical code. So the building code can dictate that that's supported. Now, the only reason we added this was because we want to look again at the panel's comment, because they rejected this. And what did they say? They said references to unspecified building codes is inappropriate. It says it is the panel's intent. Listen to this, Jay. It is the panel's intent to require fixtures otherwise supported and to be fastened to the grid. The commenter offered no evidence that this is not necessary. Unanimously voted, right? So this is a second statement by this code panel that they intend for all luminaires lay in the grid style to be secured to the ceiling grid, even if it's independently supported. So
to the grid itself.
To the grid itself. Okay. So we're not talking about luminaires on a ceiling box with a T-bar that goes across it for a regular luminaire. We're talking about troffers, however you want to say it. We're talking about lay-in luminaires that are put in, that we put them in.
2x2 luminaires, or the 2x4 luminaires. You see them in the hospitals, the libraries, but most of your commercial application office buildings, whatever.
Yep. So the point is, if the ceiling grid can support the luminaire and it has a listing that allows it to support the weight, then it could support the luminaire without any additional support, but it still has to be connected and tied to the ceiling grid. Now, if the instructions for the luminaire give directions that say that you're to secure and support that luminaire at four corners or at two opposite corners. I'm getting feedback, Jay. So I'm thinking you got a microphone open somewhere. Or got multiple microphones open on your end over there. So,
let me do something real quick.
You have your one mic open, but you might have your camera mic open or some other mic open. All right, so what we've got here is that if the ceiling grids can support a luminaire and you want to lay it in there, that's fine. If the ceiling grid is designed to support the luminaire, and we're going to look at the code here in a minute because it gives us direction, then if it's constructed a certain way and it has a certain rating, it could support the luminaire. Okay? If the instructions from the manufacturer of the luminaire say that you have the supports and you use four corners or you use two corners, opposite corners, you follow the instructions. However, you also have other rules. You have international building code. You have local municipality rules. You have seismic requirements depending on where you're at in the country. They will make requirements that would supersede this. And they might say, I don't care. I know the NEC doesn't deal with these independent supports to the luminaire. Okay? Because the NEC doesn't talk about those kind of guy wires for that. It talks about how to do it if you're going to support raceways, outlet boxes, cables, and that kind of thing. But when it comes to these luminaires and the four corners and the independent support wire, the NEC doesn't deal in that. Doesn't talk about that. But that's governed by the building codes. That's governed by local jurisdiction. That might be covered by their like in California, their administration of the any seismic rules that they might have. Those rules have to be followed. The NEC is like, dude, I'm just here to tell you that this Luminaire has to be secured to the grid. That's all I'm here to tell you. That's what the NEC says, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So
hopefully it's better.
Yep. Perfect. All right. So so there's your history. And we're going to go look at the code real quick, but there's your history. The NEC, the code making panel was very clear. It doesn't matter whether or not you independently support that Luminaire or you have a grid that's designed to support a Luminaire. It doesn't matter. As far as the NEC is concerned, you're going to secure that Luminaire to that ceiling grid. Again, we're talking very specific about lay-in style Luminaires. Okay.
And one of the guys in the chat, Alvarado, says we support the Luminaires with 2 ceiling wires cross corner and 4 self tappers at each corner, and that's one of the ways I told you earlier that we would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just felt weird sometimes when I first started doing troffers. It felt weird to take a self tapper through a perfectly good piece of grid and the actual light itself. You're thinking, okay, am I messing with the listing of it? What am I doing here? Maybe you're having trouble with the drill. You're trying to support it.
Mm-hmm.
But now it kind of all comes around and makes sense from those 2 existing code proposals and inputs, because it clearly says that you have to support it to the grid.
Yeah,
that would
well,
be
we should say we have to secure it to the grid.
Or secure it, yeah, secure it to the grid.
Now, this is a straight. These are pretty straight. This is a reject. So this reject that you see on the screen was submitted, and it was point blank. The action by the panel was, look, we don't want to offer an alternative. We know that the building code might have something or to independently support them. We don't care. We want you to secure that Luminaire. And the concept that the person this is 2 different. This is Massachusetts submittal, and then the other one's from California. Now, ask me which one you think has more experience with seismic activity. You think Massachusetts or California? California. So there is an issue where you have firefighters coming in and you have the buildings moving, everything could be moving or whatever. And some people say, well, I want to be able to pull down the grid to fight a fire and pull the Luminaires down with it. Okay. All of it come down. Or if you independently support the Luminaire, the problem you have is if they pull down the grid, then you still got Luminaires that are hanging there that could fall on top of them while they're doing their work. Right. So there's different ways that people look at this. But as far as we're concerned, the NEC is pretty clear. If a local jurisdiction, if the rules in the Luminaire's listing, if it's in their instructions, if it's seismic required by a local jurisdiction, wherever they're at, they're in that seismic zone, they're going to require the additional independent supports. As far as the NEC is concerned, if you're going to lay it in that grid, and that grid is going to be designed to support it, right? Then you're going to connect that Luminaire to it. So now, next thing we need to do, though, Jay, is we need to look at the NEC, because even though NEC shouldn't tell us how to make a grid, it is going to give us some guidance. And as an electrician, we have to ask. We have to ask the questions and at least get our boxes checked off when we say to somebody like the general contractor, this ceiling grid is designed to support these Luminaires, right? Okay. And he might say, well, they're being independently supported. That's fine. Okay, good. Then we don't have to worry about the grid's integrity, but I've still got to connect to it. So let's go on and look at what we got, a little lesson. So this might be hard for folks to see, but this is the NEC, and we want to look at it, because what we're dealing with here is means of support in 410.36, which again used to be 410.16c back in the day, but it's evolved. And this is the one we're working with, is 410.36b. Now this is broken down. This can be odd for some people. This is broken down into 2 pieces. The first part is attempting to sound like it's telling you something that you're sitting there thinking, I don't have anything to do with the construction of the ceiling grid. But here's what it says. Framing members of a suspended ceiling system used to support luminaires shall be securely fastened to each other and shall be securely attached to the building structure at appropriate intervals. So this has to do with the design of that grid. Yep. It's connected to the perimeter. It's being designed. Now, I know as an electrician, we don't do this. But this is telling me, look, as an electrician, before I go dropping that luminaire into that grid, you better make sure that grid is designed a certain way. Okay?
Yeah, and usually you can tell. I mean, I've been in some hanky, janky places where I didn't even want to put a 2x4 in the actual grid because it wasn't
grid moves
supported
around.
properly.
Everything, you touch it and bump it, and it goes offline, right? It's
yeah, and it's like, how am I supposed to get this troffer in there that I just bought? And, I'm going to damage it up. It's going to because it's hard enough to get them out of the package and in right without scuffing them and marking them up, let alone the ceiling support system be all janky and not attached properly.
Right. So the first part of this rule is just reminding the electrician, look, you need to make sure that that's if you're going to let this grid support your luminaire, then you need to make sure it's attached to the building structure, appropriate intervals, and that would be based on the listing of the ceiling grid, which you might say as an electrician, how do I know what that is? Well, you have to ask. You have to ask. Okay? So you got to find out and ask the questions. And you would hope that in this case, it was already designed this way and the design engineers and everybody knew it. But, we got to ask. Okay, so once that's established, then we get into what's important for us, me and you. It says luminaires shall be securely fastened to the ceiling framing members by mechanical means, such as bolts, screws, or rivets. Okay, you used screws, right?
Yeah, we used the panhead self-tapper style.
Right. Now, here's the one that somebody says, okay, the clips that come on the luminaires, we don't like those, yada, yada, yada. It also goes on to say, listed clips identified for use with the type of ceiling framing members and luminaires shall be permitted. Now, the luminaires are probably the manufacturers that manufacture the luminaires. Yeah. It manufactures these clips. So obviously they're listed. They're part of the listing. They're part of the luminaire. Now, whether or not it's listed or not for that specific framing member, I want to think that most of these ceiling suspended grid systems are very similar. Right? I would imagine there's not that big of diversity amongst these ceiling grid men, other than the ones that are fire rated and have the heavier weight for the tile or thickness or whatnot like that, right?
Right.
So personally, me as an AHJ in the past, I have no problem with the little clips on the luminaires that turn, that bend, and they will bend over the frame. I have no problem with that. It came on the luminaire. It's part of the listing of the luminaire. The thought that I'm going to find some special clip that meets every ceiling frame, suspended ceiling manufacturers, and my luminaire is probably slim and none. So I think what most people do is they don't want to fight that argument and they go, screw it. I'll just screw it. I'll just use screws, I'll just use rivets and rivet it to it, because I know people that do that. I've seen people that actually will drill it out. And they drill straight through at each corner, and then they put a rivet in there and do a pop rivet. And that works pretty well too. I've seen other people just throw the self-tapping screws on the end of their Ryobi, because we don't use DeWalt's in Milwaukee's, fanboys out there. We know that you're switching all to Ryobi.
Do not bring a Ryobi.
I don't know if everybody knew that or not, but Jay's switching totally to Ryobi.
Are you hearing this guy, man? He's going to bring a Ryobi to a commercial job site. Walter, Nick, Los, you guys know that. Come on. That's homeowner stuff. Keep that stuff at your house.
It all screws. So at the end of the day, most of you are choosing to use screws. You can buy the little screws, the little ones. You buy.
Yeah, I think they're the
big box of
quickest,
'em.
fastest, easiest.
Boom, boom,
You
boom,
throw them in your
boom, boom.
pouch, you grab a couple, boom, boom. Yeah, that's how, and that's how the guys in the chat are saying they did it, or they're doing it. Nick did say, 2 weeks ago he got failed because the clips provided with the Luminaire wasn't sufficient enough, so he had to screw them. But what you're saying is, if you went in and you see Nick and he had a Luminaire, a troffer with all four, what we call what I call hurricane clips,
the clips that are provided from the manufacturer of the Luminaire
on them, and you had them all four out and
I would
attached
pass
to the grid,
personally.
you'd be okay.
Personally, I have no problem with it. I have no problem
because
with
it says it right there. It says
It's
listed
right there.
clips identified for use with the type of ceiling framing members.
And to think that the manufacturers of a lay-in Luminaire didn't do their research.
Yeah, like they don't know. They're just throwing some piece of metal on there. Come on, it's cut out a certain way. It's allowed to support a certain weight. It's designed. It even has, because those little clips, they even have the holes in them so you can independently support them.
Yep.
Usually they fold over and they clip in, and you also have the little holes for the guy wire.
They know what they're doing, Jay. The manufacturers know what they're doing, and these are designed to go in suspended. But we have people out there, inspectors, that want to be so hard, that want to have so much chest pounding, that they want to make it.
Spectre.
Yeah, they want to make it difficult. Now, super Spectre. So now I do get it throughout the country. Like we have Juan says here in New York City, the only negative thing I'll say about New York City is they're about freaking 3 cycles behind everybody else in the country because they're so delayed on everything. But in reality, there are many places around the country that do require the independent support. Yeah. And that's done through building code. That's done through local jurisdiction. That is not done through the NEC. That's the key I want to make. That's the key I want to make. As far as the electrician's concerned, I have to know that grid is designed to support the Luminaire. Now, if there's a thought in my mind as an electrician that grid isn't designed to support a Luminaire, I'm going to make that question to the GC.
Yes.
And then it might come back to say, well, what does the listing of the Luminaire say? The listing might say, or instructions might say, to independently support that Luminaire. Zombies in the house. So they might say that you have to do it. Then you just do it. But here's the short answer to everything about the Luminaire. The question that everybody always asks is about the Luminaire. Does the Luminaire have to be secured to the grid? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Whether it's independently supported or not, it still has to be secured to the grid. And how do we know this? Because the code making panel in 1987 edition answered it directly as their intent. Now, you can interpret anything you want, and it could be worded a little bit better than it is. But at the end of the day, that's pretty clear. They said it twice in the substantiation and in the panel comments that they believe that the Luminaire should be secured to the grid. Point blank, mic drop. It's over. The debate is over. It's over. There is no debate ever again. The only debate now is whether or not a local building code or some kind of federal in your job that you're doing requires an independent supporting of Luminaire. As far as NEC is concerned, validate the grid, put the Luminaire in there, secure the Luminaire to the grid. Done. From that perspective.
Yeah, when we were putting them in, we would think, okay, we would independently support the Luminaire on cross corners, kind of what Alvarado, hopefully I'm saying that right, said that AD. Mm-hmm. He said he supports it on cross corners. The reason why I think that's a good idea, because like you said, when the fire guys come in and they're tearing down stuff, you'd think you'd want the Luminaire up, but you kind of made a good point. Either way, if it's up or not, even if it's supported, it's going to come down. It's not like it's going to really, when they're coming through there, they're either going to knock them down or they're going to stay up by those supported ones. But I didn't know about the support to the grid because of the movement.
Yeah, that was their biggest concern. That was their biggest concern, is that with people in the building, that the luminaires get to moving and the cadence of the movement opposes the cadence of the actual grid or the building, and they get to moving and they start banging against each other, and then things start falling. And the occupants of the room, they want it to move as a system. And that's what they wanted. So that's why they want the luminaire secured to the grid.
That makes so much sense now.
Yeah, the debate may go on where people say, well, no, if the grid is not technically supporting the luminaire, then it doesn't have to meet this rule. I've argued that both ways, whichever it's been more beneficial to what I wanted to achieve. But now that I don't have to argue that anymore, I can just tell you what the code says, and the code says what it says. And that's what's so neat about going back, folks, and going back into, NFPA accounts are free. They're free. You can get a free NFPA account, and you can go back and look at history. See this right here? This right here is a proposal. I'm so used to now calling it what it is now. This is a public input and a comment, basically. That's what you got right here. Back from 1987, which, beautiful. And we probably did it better then than we do today with code panels, is they literally said it point blank. So there's no arguing when something in the code, it's right there. Secure those luminaires to the grid, regardless if it's independently supported. That was their intent. And it hasn't changed since. And nobody submitted a public input or public comment to change that since. So it was affirmed with a unanimous vote twice, both in the comments for proposal in the proposal stage way back. And for those that want to go look that up on your own, it's in 1987. And the actual reference you're going to use is for the one that does the explanation, in case you want it, keep it handy, show your folks at work around the old work table. Don't ask me to email it to you because I'm not. Go check it out. It is 18-32, okay, in the 1987 edition of the NEC, which is available online for free. And then the comment portion of it that reaffirmed it, that was 1823. So that's interesting. One was 1832 and the other one was 1823. So that's funny how it worked out like that. It's serendipitous. So there you go. Answers the great debate. What do you think about that? So,
I thought that was really good, man. 410.36b, it talks about it right there. It even says screws, rivets, like a frog.
Ribbit. Yeah,
and
so the biggest concern is when
bolts.
people see that first paragraph, they say, well, if it's not supporting it, I don't have to follow all that. That's not what it's saying. The first sentence is telling you how the grid's supposed to be constructed to support the luminaire. If the grid is being used as a support, right? But then it goes
this is the only way you're going to be allowed to put that troffer in there. I mean, you have to go through this. If they're telling you if it's not designed to support it, then don't put it in there. Don't be an idiot and throw up a fixture where it shouldn't go. It's telling you right there to look at it. That's your first step. Okay, now if it is good and it's supported appropriately to the structure, like your fixture can lay in there, then you go up there, you turn your fixture sideways, get it up there, and mechanically put it or secure it to the ceiling framing member, which is the grid itself.
But Jay, there'll still be people out there that says no. If it's not using the grid to support the luminaire, then I don't have to follow those rules. And again, I've shown you what the code panel itself has stated and what their intent is. So you don't have to agree with me. Okay, because I can argue both ways. But
if they say it that way, if they're talking about, if it doesn't support the luminaire, then I don't have to follow these rules. So then what they want to do is they just want to put the luminaire up there and just sit it there and don't do any clips.
It's just sitting in there. It's like trapezing. It's just
lay it right there.
Hanging in there. So when the grid comes down, the luminaire just stays up. But that luminaire is going to swing like crazy. And again, so depending on where you're at, that creates a secondary hazard, right? So
yeah, that is, I can't really see that side of it, because if you just lay it in there, then it's the whole reason why, like you said, that first code article you read about the grid going one way and the light. Well, this one, the light wouldn't go; it would just drop. It wouldn't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even probably move with it as much. Once it started spreading, it would cause more damage. But yeah, that's pretty interesting that you could do that. So really, you could just do the 4 clips and be fine if your building code didn't require independently supported grid wires.
Yeah, so if my grid was designed, it was constructed this way, it was, connected the way it was, and it's designed to support the Luminaire, then I can put the Luminaire, put the clips on it or secure it, and I'm done. I don't have to have an independent support. Unless the instructions for the Luminaire tell you in the instructions to provide an independent support.
Right.
Read those instructions that most people usually pull out and toss away. Read them.
Right.
Because if they do require it, then that's part of the listing of the product. That's part of its installation instructions. So again, we make the big bucks. So we're supposed to know all these rules. But in theory, if the Luminaire was in a drop in a suspended ceiling met the first part of that 410.36 B
structured well,
and it's designed that way. I put the Luminaire in. All I would have to do is secure that Luminaire to the grid, and that's all I got to do.
That's it. Move on. If a building inspector, if a municipality, if another jurisdictional thing or a building code rule, if the plans say it,
if
probably
something else calls for an independent support, that's fine.
Yep.
Still got to secure it to the grid. So easy way to do this is, hey guys, always secure it to the grid.
Always secure it to the grid, right?
Always secure it to the grid. That's it. So, but there'll be people that'll continue to argue that. But again, it's hard to get around the code panel's intent. They state it black and white. When you break down that code rule in 410.36b, okay. So, question Octavia said, how do you secure the new LED panels? I don't know. You're going to have to look at the manufacturer's instructions. You'll have to follow their instructions. And again, if 410.36b comes into play, then you're going to have to use one of the methods there to secure it to the grid. And at worst case scenario, you're going to have to reach out to the manufacturer and say, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to secure it? But I would think that they have a method for securing it. I would think they have a method for securing it. So
whoever's ordering that lighting package, better lighting panels suck. Hell would. Yeah, whoever's ordering that lighting package probably should know too what's going with what. Whether it's the actual owner of the store, like when I did some of the shopping centers, like the Nikes, the North Faces, all those places, they had their own lighting package, right. And they would supply it. You know what I mean? They would supply the lighting package, and you'd have the assemble system with it, and how you had to support it, and they know what they're doing. But as far as those LED panels, they have to know something. They have to know something.
I'm thinking those LED panels, if they drop in the ceiling grid, they're going to have some kind of clip on them. On the sides or something, they're going to have some kind of clip on them. Yeah.
They have the clips on the sides. Yeah, Robert says the clips on the sides. Easy peasy, boom, boom.
There you go. But again, if you're in a jurisdiction that says, nope, I don't like those clips, then you got to look at them and go, dude, why do you think they put them on the Luminaire?
Right.
I mean, come on, you're being difficult.
Hey, I'll be honest with you. It's kind of like those guys out there that say they don't stab in the back of devices. Oh, I don't stab. I just curl.
We should have a debate on that.
They wouldn't have the
I will backstab a receptacle. I will backstab a switch every day of the week. I don't care what
Every
those
day.
people say. It's listed. I don't have a problem with it. If I got to go out to fix it as a service call, guess what? I'll bring my calculator with me because I'm on charge.
Right.
It's a listed product.
That is
Kinda
a
like
good
Wago.
good
The
Wago
the
debate.
old Wago
Yeah.
debate again. Do we have
We
that
have-
coming
we
up
can-
in an upcoming episode or something? The Wago debate.
If we don't, we should have that and even mix in the backstabbing and the curling, because again, some people have different opinions. I know you guys out there on the chat have done it a bunch of different ways. When I was in the commercial side, we always circled the terminal with it. We wrapped it around it. And I took that in when I was doing residential in the beginning, but then my project manager, Chris, he was like, no, man, on trims, we got a backstab. Because he came from a place where they were doing the cookie cutter homes, just boom, 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 boom. But no, that would be a good one. And then also, back to what you were talking about before in 300.11, I don't know if we want to get into it, but I know to maybe end this was let's say I had a troffer in a ceiling. I secured it to all four corners with the clips or the screws, and I had two guy wires, grid wires supporting cross corners, and they were painted, purple or blue, whatever. Am I able to support the MC cable that goes in and out of that troffer with bat wings on those grid wires?
Yeah, as long as they're not ones that's designed to support the ceiling grid.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Okay, so if you look at the code, so what you'll see as people will look at the code is that we're talking about securing and supporting is 300.11. All right. And it says securing in place. Raceways, cable assemblies, boxes, cabinets, and fittings shall be securely fastened in place. And you'll notice that there's a B, and there's a B1, and then there's a B2. So you have what's called a fire-rated assembly, and you have a non-fire rated assembly. And a lot of this has to do with the tiles, by the way. Okay, what the rating is of the tiles. So, but it works. You can't have a ceiling suspended system and all of a sudden be a fire rated if it's non-fire rated by just putting tiles in there, because the tiles weigh so much more. So the full assembly has to be evaluated as part of a fire rated design. Okay. And it's designed that way. And it might give you a 2-hour fire rating or something. It's designed a certain way. Okay. And then you've got the traditional non-fire rated assemblies, like what you might have just in your Walmart or something that, like that. You're not trying to create a rating. So in your fire rated assemblies, it says we're located within the cavity of a fire rated floor, ceiling, or roof ceiling assembly. So you have that area, and you have to maintain the rating of that area. So you're going to use a fire rated assembly, and it's going to have a suspended ceiling that has that rating. It says the ceiling assembly, including the ceiling support wires that are supporting it, as an independent means of securing support, shall be provided and shall be permitted to be attached to the assembly. Where independent support wires are used, they shall be designated by a color, tagging, or other effective means from those that are part of the fire-rated design. So I cannot connect my wire, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I went to the fire one first because we have to read this, but I just want to explain it. Those are rated a certain way. They're done. They're distinguished. They're specifically for the fire-rated assembly. They're to hold that weight. And you're going to have to put tie wires or these guy wires per the manufacturer instructions to make sure it can support that weight, right?
Right.
So any wiring that's located in that cavity, any of the wiring, like MC cable, let's use MC cable, says wiring located within that cavity of a fire-rated floor, ceiling, or roof, ceiling assembly shall not be secured to or supported by the ceiling assembly, including the ceiling support wires. Okay? Can't do it.
Stay off of their stuff.
Stay off of their stuff. Okay?
Stay off their stuff.
Okay? So now, Independent means of securing support shall be provided and shall be permitted to be attached to the assembly. So I can put my own independent ones in. And it says where these independent supports are used, they shall be distinguished by color, tagging, or other means so that they're distinguished from those that are designed for the fire-rated design. So the inspectors can look at it and say, wait a minute. The ones that are colored, they're the ones that they're connecting a bat wing to, or they're different in some way, right? Okay, now, exception. Remember, we're talking fire-rated assembly. It says the ceiling support systems shall be permitted to support the wiring and equipment that have been tested as part of a fire-rated assembly. So if I have a fire-rated assembly that's gone through the testing that shows that it can support Raceways or MCs or whatever like that, have at it. It's been evaluated to support the extra weight. Normal systems are not, and you wouldn't know that unless you looked at it and you had to ask somebody or look at the information about that ceiling before you as an electrician just go start securing wiring to these fire-rated assemblies support wires. Don't do it. I'm just saying the easiest thing to do is put your own in, right?
Yep.
Now,
make your little flag with your half-inch pipe. I don't know if you ever did that, but you take a half-inch pipe and peel it back like a little open flag, and you would send the grid wire up, put a hook in it, and you'd stick this pole up there, and the flag would catch it, and you would turn it, and that's how you'd wrap the guy wire around like the building structure up top. There's so many different little neat tips and tricks I learned, but yeah, we just ran our own, and we'd flag it. We'd either spray it or even put a little like red flag on it or something.
Right. Now, non-fire rated assemblies. Wiring located within the cavity of a non-fire rated floor, ceiling, or roof ceiling assembly, again, shall not be secured to, supported by the ceiling assembly, including the ceiling support wires.
Perfect.
Independent ones, and again, tagging. Okay. And you have an exception here. It says the ceiling support system shall be permitted to support branch circuit wiring and associated equipment or installed in accordance with the ceiling system's manufacturer's instructions. So you might have, for example, a ceiling system, non-fire rated, that is designed, as we said before, to support the weight of the Luminaire, right? But it might also say that it also will support the whip from the Luminaire up to the junction box. It might say that in the instructions. Okay. Now, all of that dealing with the two separate ones, you have to go back now and say, okay, now that I'm familiar with the different fire rated, non-fire rated, let's look at the charging statement for 310.11b. It says, support wires that do not provide secure support shall not be permitted as the sole support. Okay. Support wires and associated fittings that provide secure support and that are installed in addition to the ceiling grid support wires shall be permitted as the sole support. So again, this is just going towards saying, look, you're not allowed to secure it to these fire rated assemblies or non-fire rated assemblies, ceiling system, guide wires, or support wires. Okay. You need to do your own, and they shall be permitted to be the sole support of that wiring, okay, or that cable assembly. Now it says, where independent support wires are used, they shall be secure at both ends. So we're not talking trapezes here, Jay. We're not talking about securing at one end and just have a wire hanging down. And you say, oh, it's hanging down. I've seen people do this. It's kind of like only connected at one end and it's just hanging down. No. It's got to be connected at both ends. So it has to be secured to the grid and secured to the structure. And it will be taut. That is what you can hook your cables, your boxes, things like that to, right? Cannot do it to one that's just hanging and only one end is secure, okay? And then it says cables and raceways.
Floating.
Yeah, just one end just floating. It just swings on one end. Can't do that. Now it says cables and raceways shall not be supported by ceiling grids. Okay, so again, that just goes to say that you're not going to run your raceways, you're not going to run your cables, and you're not going to route them on the ceiling grid. The grid is to hold the tiles. The grid, if designed right, is to hold the luminaire, if that's what it's been designed to do. It is not designed to have cables or raceways running along it. It's not. Okay?
Yeah, that one there can be a little. I'm glad you broke it down, because it can be a little. I don't know, just a little confusing, I guess. Zombie.
Yep. So you kind of got to follow these little pieces. But to keep it simple, raceways, cable assemblies, things like that, do not use the wires that support the grid. Okay? You can put your own in, but make sure they're distinguished so they're not confused with the fire rated design, or they're not confused with the ceiling grid supporting design, unless, of course, they're listed to be able to support that. Okay? So that's how you would do that. So and that's probably violated quite a bit up in suspended ceilings. I know in the city of Alexandria, we used to do a lot of those inspections. We were fail people all the time for that. Okay, they were tying these MCs to the guy wires, the support wires that were supporting the grid, and we go, give us some documentation that says that system is designed for you to be able to do that. Yeah. And of course, they never had it. Right?
There is always, when you get the core and shell going on a project from the foundation up and everything, you come in and there's a certain time before the grid guys put in their ceiling grid and the supports that we would come behind, and we would actually put in our supports for, future lights or support systems. And we would try to get in there before the ceiling guys, so that way depending on how high the ceiling was or the support system that we're attaching to, if it was 10, 15 feet above, we'd want to get in there before they even put the ceiling up, because if not, we're messing with the actual support system, the grid itself, trying to put up a darn grid wire. So I remember we'd go in there before, weeks before, and we'd either shoot them up with the Hilti gun, or we would do what I was telling you with a piece of 1/2-inch conduit or 3/4, you would cut it at an angle, and it'd make a flag like this sticking out, and you'd have your wire, your grid wire going over it. I know some people that do
essentially the same thing. They just take a grinder and cut a notch in it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and they just keep that piece of EMT just for that, or whatever they're using. Just for that. That's just
all
for
you
that.
did with it, man. You knew if you had that piece of EMT, you were in the doghouse.
Now, somebody asked a question about color. It says right here again. I'm hoping everybody has a code book at some point. Again, it says, does it say color in there? It says, where independent support wires are used, again, not the ones that support the grid, but independent ones for the wiring, it says they shall be distinguishable by color, by tagging, or other effective means from those that are part of the fire-rated design. So those may have no color on the fire-rated design, but all of your independent ones, you may do orange, or you may spray paint them. I think we used to do red, not orange. We used to do red.
Yeah.
But, there are some people that I know, one lady who used to actually she had these tags made up, and she put her own little tag on each one of them. So when they were putting it up there, she put a tag on it. And interesting enough, every one of those tags, Jay, was like a business card. It had her name on it, phone number, and web address, and all this kind of stuff on it. And we used to say, people would say, well, why do you do that? That's the same woman also that used to do, instead of black, red, blue, she would do like purple, pink, and or a tan. She would use odd colors. And everybody used to say, why do you do that? And then they would say the same thing about her tagging. And they'd say, why do you do that? And she would go, because one, you're talking about me. Two, anybody that gets in that attic will see my name. And I used to go, even the lawyers will see your name. And she used to say, it don't matter, because what we do is right. So we're not worried about a lawyer. I was like, woo, mic drop, boom.
Yeah.
So she used it for advertising. So And she would say that anytime people would go in to do modifications or add a circuit or do something or call, they would see her advertising or her markings, and they would say, well, they must have done the work. Let's call them and get, because they're more familiar with the system than anybody. That type of thing.
Right.
So she used to use it as an advertising. I never had a problem putting my name on anything because I stand behind all my work. I wasn't going to hide anything above a ceiling. You know what I'm saying?
No, I never thought about that. The times that we would spray paint them, I think red too, for the most part when we go in there. But then there's those times where, you're in a pinch, you're adding another circuit, there's a change order, someone forgot to run a switch leg, whatever it is, and you need to shoot up a couple wires or put them in, and maybe you don't have the spray paint on you. Then we would go back and we would flag it red. We would stay with the paint color, but we would just put a flag because everybody has red tape on you.
She actually is simple. She bought the tape. You can buy tape with you put your name on it, like the duct tape, but with your name on it. She would get the pink tape. She had tape made, and it had her company printed on it every inch. So all she would do is take it, rip off a piece 6 inches, and have her guys wrap it around the wire and then put it together, and it made a little flag. And it had her name and address and phone number on every one of them. And she put that on every single thing. And that met the requirement. So anytime you looked up there, the inspector saw that flag and saw that there was a raceway or cable connected to it, they were like, okay, that's not the ceiling grid. It's good enough for us. And that's how they did.
And
that's just how she did it.
Flagging the ceiling grid ones, don't, because the way they twist their wire to the ceiling grid itself, you'll never be able to do that. You couldn't convince someone that you made that twist. Those guys twist them.
Oh yeah,
super crazy, super
and we
tight.
We don't. We kind of go.
Ours are all
a little bit around it. They're like
in the face. That's right. They're all. Inspectors like, hey, you might want to secure it. You might want to tighten that up a little bit. Yeah, we got it. We got it. Don't worry about it.
It's secure at both ends. But anyway, that's all. Kind of the discussion on that topic. Again, it's been an ongoing discussion for people for years, and so I thought it was important for me and you to have an episode where we bring out the past. Look at what the code intent was by the panel, make some and kind of bring some closure to that. And if you believe it should be worded differently, and if you disagree, then guess what? I'll coin a phrase from a very smart man named Mark Early. His comment to you would be, we eagerly await your public input for the 2026 edition of the National Electrical Code. If you want to change it, we welcome you to submit it, because all of
not
you.
Not 2023.
No, it's done.
That's gone.
It's
done.
Gone. And nothing you're going to submit in 2023. We're already.
That's gone.
We're already. That ship is already. But anyway. So. All right, brother. Well, I guess that is it for tonight, folks. Oh, we don't have any spinning the wheels tonight. So we didn't have any donations, so we got no wheel spinners tonight. So we're not gonna spin the wheel. But Oscar, I didn't see you tonight, but I will make sure that your stuff is getting out the door, and I will definitely get it out of the door this week. So unless Jay wants to spin for somebody, I don't have anybody to spin for.
No, I think that's going to be it.
All right. Are we still streaming over on YouTube?
Yep. Yeah, I'm reading right now. Robert says thanks.
Yep.
He appreciates it. I think Walter got some good knowledge out of it. Again, guys, this is something that we always hear as apprentices, what to do, how to support Luminaires. In tonight's episode, we covered it all. So hope you guys enjoy.
A lot of stuff covered tonight. So till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless.
You're listening to Electrician Live with your host, Paul Abernathy and Jay Grunberg.